Hello everyone, we're going to pick up with activity 4 on page 86 and 87. And essentially what we need to do is set up cells and then the fluid on the outside of the cells that match what we would see happening in a healthy person who doesn't have cystic fibrosis as well as in a person who does have cystic fibrosis. So the first thing that we need to do is make our cells. According to the chart on page 87, you can see that we have something called a bag and a beaker. And the bag there is something we're going to make with our dialysis tubing, and that bag is going to represent our cells. And then whatever's going to be in our beaker is going to represent what's going to be the fluid surrounding the cell. So I want to show you how to make these simulated cells first. We are going to make the simulated cell for the person with cystic fibrosis first. And so in using that dialysis tubing, I think I had shown you before that this dialysis tubing is a tube and that it's cut at both ends, and that in order to get it so that you can work with it and have it be pliable, you really need to get it wet. And so that's what I have here. This has been soaking in just plain water. And here you can see that I have tied the bag at one end with some string. And then we need to get some fluid inside the bag. And the fluid that we're going to put inside of the bag is a simulated cytosol. So it's what we would expect of the fluid to be like on the inside of a cell. So as we do this, we're simply going to put our funnel in the other end of our dialysis tube. And then according to our instructions in activity 4, I'm going to take 10 milliliters of our simulated cytosol and I'm going to pour it into the funnel, and then it should be going into our bag. So you can see that we've got this bag now that's going to be filled with this fluid. Now we need to tie this bag, and we need to do it in a way where we can get as many air bubbles out as we can, but we also don't want to tie the bag very taut. We want to tie it out here close to the end. So I'm going to try to press those air bubbles out and then try to roll that here toward our end, and then I'm going to fold that over, and then I've got a piece of string here and we'll secure the end of the bag with our string. So this is what it's like to make a bag with simulated cytosol, and this one is representing what we would have with our cystic fibrosis patient. So I'm going to put a double knot in that. You can see that this is a lot easier with 2 people rather than just 1. So if you weren't in lab today, it would probably be a little simpler. Alright, so I think we did a pretty good job. You can see that it's nice and taut. It should fold over my finger like this. But you can also see that I have a little air bubble in it, and we'll have to make sure that that's not a problem later, and I'll show you why that's going to matter. So we're going to put this off to the side right now. So that's our cystic fibrosis bag. I've already gone ahead and made our bag for our normal healthy person, and I did it much the same way in that I took simulated cytosol from a healthy individual who doesn't have cystic fibrosis. I took the exact same amount, 10 milliliters, and I made a second bag. And so our 2 bags are made, and the next thing we need to do is to get a mass of these bags. In order to do that, we're going to use the balance. So you can see that as we bring that balance over, they're pretty easy to use. We just turn them on, and we have to wait until they show 0. And if they don't go to 0, then we'll just simply hit this button right here, and that will zero it out for us so that we can get our mass. So let's start with our non-cystic fibrosis individual. We're going to record this bag mass on our chart on page 87. Where we have bag mass in grams start for our non-CF individual. And you can see that that bag weighs 10.8 grams. And so we'll make that recording there. And then we need to do the same thing with our cystic fibrosis. These bags should weigh close to the same amount. We shouldn't see a huge difference between them. We can double check that this goes back to 0, and it does. So now we can weigh our bag for our cystic fibrosis. And this weighs 11.8, so we have a little bit of difference between the two. But if we get a beginning weight, then what we're really interested in is the difference between the start and the end of our experiment rather than the absolute weight that we start out with. Once we have those weights, we're then going to, as it says in step number 11, we're going to place our bags in beakers, and the beakers are going to represent the fluid that would be on the outside of the cell. So here is the fluid that we have for our non-cystic fibrosis individual. And so in order for us to take that bag and put it in, we'll do that. So here we go. We're going to put that bag in there. And this is where the air bubbles can matter, because we want these bags to go into the fluid and not float. So I'm going to have to double check this regularly that it's staying underneath the fluid. So we'll put that off to the side. And then here is the simulated cytosol for our cystic fibrosis person. And we'll take that bag off of our balance and we'll drop that in there. We're going to let these bags sit for about 20 or 30 minutes or so. So in our next video, we'll have our results and we'll analyze them together.